Let's finish this off. And I quote, "It's important to note that the claims I make are original claims. I am not claiming that Gödel made my claim. I take Gödel's work beyond what Gödel himself understood." It would be like if someone took, I'm assuming that's what he meant to write. It would be like if someone took Einstein's general relativity and extended it even further beyond what Einstein understood. My claim is not that I am presenting Einstein's theory. I am presenting something beyond it. So, of course, an academic would love to object to that because they are in the business of just teaching the classic theory as it is commonly known. They are not interested in going beyond it because that is considered arrogant and impossible, end quote. Okay, I just got finished telling you that there are many academics which have ideas that go far further than Leo's. So again, this is just an excuse. It's just a coping mechanism to protect his ego. That's not the case. Also, again, he said his claims about Gödel's theorems are original. No, they're not. They're not. I can list papers in the future of other people who have said something similar and taken it further than he has, further than his own claim. Also, okay, he painted another broad brushstroke here. He said that academics are, and I quote, "in the business of just teaching the classic theory as it is commonly known," end quote. Okay, in class they are, but that doesn't mean that every academic just adheres to the classic standard theory. Again, go back to quantum mechanics. Not every professor is a proponent of the Copenhagen interpretation, even though that is the classic, commonly taught interpretation in a quantum physics class. That does not mean that every academic agrees with it. A lot of professors will literally, I've talked to professors, they tell me they'll literally teach something in class, and then they'll go to their lab and do stuff that completely disagrees with what they just taught. Well, does that mean that academics are dishonest and lying to their students? No. It just means that they are teaching the most solid interpretation we have right now, but then they are going off and doing experiments to find if that interpretation is really as solid as we currently think it is. Some professors think it's not, so they run experiments to try and find whether it truly is or isn't. So it's not like they're being dishonest, teaching their students one thing, going off and doing another. It's that they're teaching their students one thing, and then they're going off further beyond it in their own work, finding a way to disagree with it, finding holes in it, potentially at least. So yeah, that's not correct. But anyways, and I quote, "If you want to understand my Gödel video, you got to actually think for yourself, not make appeals to academic authority," and end quote. Okay, I wasn't planning to stop there, but that's actually problematic. This whole idea that citing experts is an appeal to authority fallacy is itself a fallacy. There's a difference between a fallacious appeal to authority and a genuine appeal to expertise. For example, go back to the car example. If your car was having problems, who would you take your car to get fixed? You would take it to a mechanic or an engineer, right? Why? Because they are an expert. They are an authority on that subject, right? That's why you take it to them. That is not an appeal to authority. That is an appeal to expertise. It's the same thing with abstract intellectual topics in academia. People like to try and make like a distinction there, like a duality, like, oh, it's different. You know, my car is physical and I need to actually get it fixed. That's why I take it to an expert. Academics are just sharing ideas. No, it's the same thing. An expert in engineering, is an expert in engineering. That is why you take your car to a mechanic or an engineer to get it fixed. Experts in science or other more mentally based abstract subjects have also received training in those subjects. It's not like engineers have received training on how to fix your car, but then scientists haven't received training on how to understand physics. No, they've both received high-grade training. So if you're going to trust the engineer who has high-grade training, it's fine to trust the understanding of a physicist who has gone through their own high-grade training. That's not an appeal to academic authority. It's an appeal to a person who has put in the work, cultivated themselves for a decade of rigorous study so that they would understand the subject better than most people. They worked for it. They earned it. They're not just some fallacious authority. They worked for the position they're in. So why not appeal to them? Why not try to understand what they understand so that you can advance your own understanding? He also says you got to think for yourself. Okay, I'm sorry. There's some subjects that are too advanced for you to just sit in a room and think for yourself. Like, let me ask you this. If you sat in your room for 5 hours and just thought about gravity, do you think you would understand gravity? No, it's not enough to just think for yourself. This is another problem I see in the self-help community. They always teach that mantra, think for yourself. Okay, yes. For practical everyday matters, that's good, right? If you're thinking on taking this job somewhere, okay, yeah, think for yourself, mull through your options, right? These are practical decisions that affect your life. So yeah, think for yourself. But when it comes to understanding Gödel's incompleteness theorem or gravity or physics, no, it's not enough to just sit there and think for yourself. This is very incelish. You have to actually go out and communicate with people. You actually have to advance your understanding. You have to actually engage with the subject. You can't just sit in your room by yourself and think for yourself. That's not enough. But Leo doesn't engage academic papers. He thinks they're a waste of time. Or so it seems. So he teaches his audience that. But anyways, and I quote, "No academic understands what truth is. That's a fundamental problem." This is a what about the nature of truth? This is, I don't know, it's something about the nature of truth. You can see me trying to explain this to Kurt on his Theories of Everything podcast. Kurt didn't understand me because he is stuck in that dense academic mindset. End quote. No, actually, I recently watched that podcast, and there were a lot of questions that Kurt posed to Leo, which Leo didn't even understand. They flew like right over his head. Like the question where Kurt asked Leo, okay, so you're saying that reality is infinite consciousness. Couldn't it be possible that there's other infinities beyond consciousness? Right? So Kurt used the example of how you have like an R1 axis, right? Like that axis is infinite, but then you've got an R2 that's like another infinity. So it's like, okay, you can have infinity, but then you can have broader infinities beyond that infinity. So why couldn't it be the same case with the infinity of consciousness? Why couldn't it be that consciousness is infinite, but then there's broader infinities which are even more inclusive than that infinite consciousness? Leo completely misresponded to this question. He was like, no, R1, R2, R3, all these infinitely many axes, they're all inside of consciousness. Aren't you getting that, Kurt? But that's not what Kurt was saying. Kurt was not saying that R1 is consciousness and then R2 is outside of it. That's what Leo thought. He thought Kurt was claiming that R1 is consciousness and then all the other R axes are outside of it. And so Leo responded, no, they're R1, R2, R3, they're all inside of it. He completely misresponded to what Kurt was saying. No, what Kurt was saying is that like how R2 is beyond the infinity of R1, couldn't there be an infinity of unconsciousness beyond the infinity of consciousness? We could ask that question even if R1, R2, R3 are infinity. Even if all the axes are inside of consciousness, why couldn't there still be another infinity beyond that infinity of all those axes in the same way that R2 is beyond R1? That's what Kurt was saying, but that completely flew over Leo's head, and now he's been posting things like this on his forum saying that Kurt just didn't understand him. No, it's the other way around. There's a lot of things that Kurt asked Leo that Leo didn't understand. But again, he doesn't want to admit that. Which, again, it shouldn't be a problem. This is not a problem for Leo to be wrong on these subjects. Again, I've said this for the 5th time now. He has 3 areas in which he has world-class expertise. What's the problem? If Kurt understands more than you on metaphysics, who cares? Kurt is not world-class in 3 different subjects. He's not. Like, Leo still has the high ground, so why not just admit that Kurt understands a subject better than him? Why do that? Well, he doesn't want to, because a lot of these self-help gurus are very egotistical. Anyways. And I quote, "It is ironic that the more logical a person is, the more they struggle to grasp the significance of Gödel's theorems. In his personal writing and journals, Gödel himself criticized such academics as idiots." End quote. Okay, this is something that a lot of people bring up about Gödel, and yes, it is true. Gödel himself did think that his theorems did have metaphysical implications. But again, just because the founder of a theorem or a proof thinks it does not mean that it's proven. This also applies to quantum physics. Deepak Chopra and a lot of proponents of the consciousness interpretation of quantum physics, they all like to point at quotes from the founders of quantum physics where they say that consciousness is fundamental. Like I believe there's quotes from like Max Planck and von Neumann, Eugene Wigner. There are quotes from the founding fathers of quantum mechanics dating back to the 1930s where, yeah, they do think, or I should say they did think, they genuinely thought that quantum mechanics shows us that consciousness is fundamental. But again, that was 90 years ago? Science has come so far since the point in time of when those founding fathers were doing their own experiments on quantum physics. Science changes, science progresses. In the 90 years since then, we've discovered so many more advanced things about quantum physics that the consciousness interpretation just isn't enough anymore, or at least it doesn't seem to be. Again, it could still be true, but there's not as many supporters of it as there were back at the founding in the 30s, because with all the new things that have been discovered, it seems outdated, it seems too unadvanced. There's more advanced interpretations of quantum physics that we have now, which people think are more likely to be true, even if they haven't been proven yet. So yeah, a lot of people like to cite quotations from those founders back in the 1930s. And okay, guess what? Einstein, the founder of, general and special relativity, he believed that relativity shows us that past, present, and future all exist, such that time travel is possible in his theories of relativity. But that doesn't mean we've proven that time travel is possible. Einstein believed it. He did. That was a belief he held, just like the founding fathers of quantum mechanics believed that consciousness is fundamental. But just because they had those metaphysical positions does not mean that it's been proven. Scientists can have their own opinions. They can have their own metaphysical positions, even if they're unproven. There's a difference. You can't just take a quotation from somebody and say, look, it's been proven. No, the experiments speak for themselves, not the quotations. And people will think that sounds very stage orange and be dismissive of that. Okay, again, remember what type of person I am. I said you're a pig in the last video, even though you're not. None of this is coming from just a hyper-intellectualized place. These critiques have to be taken seriously. It's not like I'm similar to Kurt from the Theories of Everything podcast. It's not like I'm similar to these academics like Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris. Obviously, I'm very different from them. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter how different I am from them. I see their critiques and I understand where they're coming from. And I think people have to take them seriously. You can't just use quotations and act like it's done. Anyways, that was a long analysis of what Leo wrote up there. Just a few things in there. One final note, I guess I'll say about spiral dynamics. I really need to set aside a whole different video for this, but a lot of people in the self-help and spiritual communities like to use spiral dynamics to sort of categorize people into all these boxes. Like, so they'll look at somebody like Sean Carroll and say he's stage orange, and therefore he's like so low conscious that his interpretation of quantum physics couldn't possibly be correct. Okay, even if spiral dynamics were correct, even if people were at neatly fit into these various boxes. Obviously, I'm not claiming that every person is at the same stage of mental development. So I'm not saying that people aren't on a spread. No, they are. I'm just saying that I don't think that that entire spread or that entire progression can be fit so neatly into the model that spiral dynamics has. There's been many sociological critiques of it. A lot of self-help gurus like to claim that it's been objectively proven and that people speak about spiral dynamics in academia. Okay, I have friends taking anthropology classes and sociology classes, and yes, spiral dynamics is talked about in those classes, but they've shared me screenshots of their textbooks. They look over spiral dynamics to critique it because it is such a hyper simplified, unnuanced way of looking at humanity and all the various stages of development that it's not practical anymore. You can't use it. So to look at somebody like Sean Carroll and just say, oh, he's like stage orange, and then, I'm stage yellow, therefore I understand everything better than him, even quantum mechanics, that's wrong. People are more diverse than that. You may understand some things better than Sean Carroll, but that doesn't mean you understand everything better than Sean Carroll. This is where Leo was falling into a trap. He thinks that he's so high conscious that he understands quantum physics better than quantum physicists. He doesn't. He understands some things better than quantum physicists, right? He understands politics better than them. He understands consciousness better than them. He understands business better than them. Hell, he may even understand metaphysics better than them, even though I just said there's far more bizarre metaphysical positions out there, but they're not experts in metaphysics. So maybe Leo's metaphysics is more advanced than theirs. But that does not mean he understands quantum physics better than them. But he claims to. I've seen him claim that on his forum. I've seen him claim that in videos. And I've seen other spiritual teachers say this as well. Ken Wilber has claimed things like this. And it's just, no, like, people have their own special skills, right? One person is going to be better at one thing than you. You're going to be better than them in another thing. So you can't just neatly categorize people into these spiral dynamic stages of, okay, they're at a lower stage than me, therefore my opinion on a topic is inherently higher conscious or more developed than theirs. No, Sean Carroll's position on quantum physics is more developed than Leo's, or Deepak Chopra's, or Ken Wilber's. They're going to have other areas where their opinions are more advanced than Sean Carroll's. You see how it interplays and kind of interweaves? That's the diversity of humanity. That's how it works. You see how much more nuanced that is. That's a better way to engage people in an open-minded fashion. To just dismiss somebody as stage orange, therefore they don't know what they're talking about, not even in their own field of expertise, that's closed-minded. Yet a lot of proponents of spiral dynamics like to claim that they're open-minded and they're second tier, and it's like, obviously they're not. If they're just so dismissive based on stages, they're not open-minded, they're the closed-minded ones. And ironically, academics are kind of outperforming them in terms of open-mindedness. So anyways, those are a few of my critiques of some things that I see in the spiritual community and the self-help industry. Let me know if you have any questions on any of these topics. Again, remember, I've done things like this myself too. I used to think that I understood certain topics in physics better than I did, but I misdialed in. So if I took down all my videos for that, if I was that serious about it, I want to see other teachers in the community be just as serious, if not more serious about it, but I don't. And that was the point of this video. Nobody is taking these academic critiques seriously. They are writing them off as closed-minded scientific perspectives or stage orange perspectives and the like. And it's just not true. Take it from me, a person who is extremely bizarre and zen and just weird. I see that the critiques are valid. So they're not just coming from a place of academic elitism. No, they are genuine critiques. They are correct. The dismissal of them is what is false, not the critiques. All right, I'll end it there, though. Feel free to contact me if you have anything you want to talk about. Until next time, you all create a nice day.